Radio check. Loud and clear.
KSL Sports and KSL Podcast present Mode Push, an American view of F1, starting now.
And I'm stuck. This is what you get with this honestly.
I'm gutted. I'm absolutely gutted.
I enjoyed this so much. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, everybody, welcome back. It is a wild weekend in F1 racing, and that's why we do this podcast. Welcome into the Mode Push podcast. Alex Kirry, my co-host Dan Jimenez, as we are coming to you now, episode 19. We're almost 20 deep into this thing, and we're rookie drivers at this, but it's been a fun ride so far, Dan. So welcome to your weekend. I think you said it before we were in the planning here, and I was like, I don't know if I want to go that far. But you said it's the race of the year so far. I mean, in terms of competitiveness, a whole weekend, I guess. Are we talking about the entirety of the full weekend? K-Mag's, pole position, all those things. So it all added up for you to being the most exciting weekend for you.
Oh, yeah. I think start to finish had the most drama, and I loved it. The on-track racing was great. Like, it was awesome to see these guys just battling side by side for the entirety of the race. And I remember Brazil being, a competitive track, but that was more than, I felt like maybe we even had in past years. So perhaps it's, the intent of the new design of the cars that really helped play into that so that cars could follow each other. But man, I could hardly look away all weekend. The sprint race was super entertaining, and then the Sunday race, just from the drop of the green flag, felt like there were guys passing every time they cut the shot to a new set of cars. It was a lot of fun.
I looked at this whole thing across the board, and it was a fun weekend in terms of the unpredictability that you get with some of the weather stuff, and we saw it on Friday, and then K-Mag was able to put the American Haas team on pole for the first time. I don't know. That's got to be their first pole ever, right? I mean, that's got to be their first pole. K-Mag's first pole, and he's fighting his butt off in that sprint race too. And I was just like, let the guy. But I was just the whole time I'm watching it, I'm just going, don't fall out of the points. So at the very least, he got himself a point out of the sprint race, and then of course because F1 is F1. He gets out of the race in the second turn, or at least in the first lap. It was an ugly. It was a bad move by Danny Rick, and it was dumb, and it ended up putting he and K-Mag both out of the race, and so that was annoying to kind of watch. But of all the storylines over the weekend, you have George Russell. I don't want to ignore George's first F1 race win. That was a big deal, and he wins the sprint as well. So he wins the sprint, he wins the race. I mean, that's a perfect weekend, except for the fact that he looked like garbage in that Q3, like in that spin that he had. It was the thing that kind of ruined everybody else's ability to be able to stick a good lap in there and put themselves ahead of Kevin Magnussen. But I wouldn't have thought that out of a guy beaching it on Friday would have come a sprint race win and the race win. Mercedes finally gets its 1-2 for the season. Its first race win of the entire year. Could you imagine at the beginning of the year going, they probably won't win a race until November, in Brazil. So that was a cool storyline for me because George has just been phenomenal, just being that, and he's a bit of a nerd, right? Like he's just like this workhorse, try hard. I'm not trying to say those things like they sound mean, right? Like he's a sweet guy. Oh, what a sweet spirit,
yeah.
But he's not the cool guy on that team. And people who are cheering for Mercedes AMG are not cheering for George Russell most of the time. They're cheering for the champ, for Lewis Hamilton. Yeah. And so for him to finally get that win, I mean, he was shorted so many times before this, when he got that chance to sit in that Mercedes seat last year. In the one-off race, and then he had that thing in the bag, and then he just had that bad luck puncture and all that stuff. So the guy had it coming, and he's certainly talented enough to put himself at the front of the grid. What on earth is going on with this Mercedes car now? Because there's this little part of me, Dan, that goes, well, crap, I don't want to get – I mean, I don't want Red Bull to run away with next year either, but I don't want this to turn into, Mercedes figuring it out and going another eight years in a row of winning the Constructors' Championship after this year.
Yeah, that was the story of the weekend, that, Mercedes was dominant. They, Red Bull, they had some bad luck. Max scrapped with Lewis in the race, but at no point was Red Bull faster than Mercedes.
Right.
So yeah, and you heard it in the post race, Max talking about, and Sergio both talking about tire degradation. That was just usually this year that's been something that they've had the advantage on, that they've been able to hold on to their tires better than the other teams. But this weekend that wasn't the case. Mercedes was and Ferrari, I felt like, were both better on tires than Red Bull was, and so they've got to figure out why that is. I'm trying to think what could possibly be unique about Brazil that's so different than the tracks we've been to recently. It's a lot of turning. I would say as a percentage of the total lap, they're putting lateral G into that car more than probably most other tracks that are like long straight, tight corner, long straight, tight corner, where Brazil is just like almost like it's like almost like a corkscrew.
Right.
It's like they're always turning. So something about that played into Mercedes' hands, and man, that'd be crazy. If they can follow it up with another win next weekend, I think that's going to put a new spin on the offseason to see, like, hey, are we going to have 2 or 3? I think Binotto said something to the effect this weekend of Mercedes is back and they're going to be fighting for the championship next year. So I think that's great. I think it's good for the sport to have more competition.
Poor Ferrari.
Than what we saw this year.
Poor Ferrari. Like, they've already been forgotten. They had such a promise at the beginning of the year, and then Binotto's going, they could be champions again. He's just over there.
He's already hedging it. Yeah.
He's crying himself to sleep in that big silk red pillow of his on the plane back to Abu Dhabi. But I mean,
right.
The thing about, I was thinking about this with Red Bull because, I mean, we think about this all the time in the context of like American sports, where we go, hey, they're on this amazing, world championship team. They probably get along, like they love each other, man. Like you see them high-fiving each other and hugging each other on the track. But, it's not always roses. And I think that this is a weird thing, because when Max ends up not just ignoring the team orders of, hey, let's let Checo through here, he ignores it. Checo gets pissed about it, and he should, because and Christian Horner, the poor guy, has to babysit these feelings of everybody. Is it like a pretty set? Is it a set thing that it was? It's because? Is it just everybody assuming? He said he had, quote unquote, his reasons for not letting him through, and so I'm like, why have these little back and forths where you guys are? I mean, it's that kind of Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen thing where while it's going, you're going, these guys are awesome. And then you hear later, Scottie Pippen freaking hated Michael Jordan. And that's what we're kind of getting right now is Checo's on the radio before, and the team. I love this, Dan, when they do this in the race, when they go, we'll talk about it in the debrief. And they're going, what that is shut the heck up right here. I do not talk right now about like, don't say anything stupid. And he couldn't help himself. Checo ends up having to be like, I guess he shows who he really is, and you're going, dude, I know the team is just like, Horner's having to babysit these guys. And so you can't just, these guys are the world champs, right? I mean, these guys are the constructor teams, right? You have the world champion right there. But it felt, I don't know if this is like the kind of thing where Max feels like, I'm graduating to Michael Schumacher level here. I'm a world champ. And also, I'm really, really hard to get along with on the racetrack. I don't freaking care who you are. And he's a nice guy, but when he's in that cockpit, he becomes a totally different person.
Yeah, that is I think a very interesting theory. Before the weekend, if you had asked, what pair of drivers, are probably the closest friends on the grid or at least get along, I probably would have put Max and Sergio up there, for as much as Max has praised Sergio in the past when Sergio's helped him win those championships. But man, super surprising that Max didn't let Sergio pass, and it sounds like that this is stemming from some sort of beef that Max has from earlier in the season, possibly related to back to Monaco back in May. If you recall, the Sergio spun in one of the corners right before they go underneath the casino, I think, and through that tunnel. It's a real low speed corner, and if you go back and watch the video now, he's braking into it, and then he just pops the throttle in the middle of the corner and spins the car into the wall, and then qualifying's over, and he starts the race in front of Max and goes on to win the race. And so everyone's speculating that Sergio, or there are rumors that Sergio has since confessed that he did that on purpose, pissed Max off, and Max, he probably had told his team and his engineers that, look, I'm going to get that guy back at some point.
Maybe by winning the championship. Maybe that's the way you win it. Like, come on, dude. Like, I'm going to get him back at Interlagos. I'm going to pip him for 5th place, dude. Like, we watch. It's going to mean nothing to our team, but I'm going to go in there. Like, it's
so
just,
petty.
It's so stupid.
So petty.
And this is the part where
it is stupid.
The teammate thing is hard to wrap your brain around, I think, in F1 sometimes, to go, what are these guys teammates? Like, this is Red Bull, this certainly isn't the first go around for Christian Horner to have to deal with, these massive personalities. Every one of these teams. I was trying to think about it. Who wins worst teammate of the weekend award? Is it Max for ignoring those team orders? Is it Lance Stroll for almost putting the old man into the freaking wall on that straight? What is going on with that freaking guy?
Ocon.
Or Ocon. Yes. Fernando.
This was the weekend of teammates just like, oh, man, Alonso's comments about, I don't know if you saw, like, after he got back around Ocon, he called him like see a bad boy or something like that. He made some sort of comment of I'm going to pass you for the last time as your teammate. But, I never want to see you again. The other one,
yeah. And then you kind of go, oh, maybe that's why he in the cloak of darkness during the summer break just went, I'm going to a new team. It had nothing to do with the car that he was in, because we're like, why would you do that? You have this more competitive car. You're going to friggin' Aston Martin, where now he's going to have to deal with basically the same thing. A bratty teammate who is just talented enough to think that they're amazing, and they're actually not. And in Lance Stroll's case, when he came across and put Seb on the grass, you're going, hey, listen, dude, this guy's got 3 races left. You put him on the freaking grass. Seriously? On the straightaway. That is so dumb. And yeah, I was going, okay, between Esteban Ocon and Lance Stroll and Max Verstappen, who the worst teammate of the weekend was. It's a little bit of a Sophie's choice on that one, because either way, one stealing points from another guy for no reason, for a beef that no one actually knew was going on except for him in his head. The other guys were just putting their tires into their teammates' cars. It's just so freaking weird. But anyway,
and then you have Charles asking for Sergio, or not Sergio, sorry, for
Carlos, yeah.
For Carlos to give up a spot, like saying, think of the championship. It's like, dude, you cannot expect Carlos to give up his podium.
Right.
And then it wasn't Carlos that said no. The team just came back to Charles and said, no, it's too risky.
Right.
And so Charles has, again, beef with his team but I think that's expecting too much.
Yeah.
And Charles, like, one heck of a drive from going, getting punted into the wall by Lando to coming back and finishing 4th. Like, that's pretty incredible.
Well, and Alonso, you had the same thing. You had Fernando, who Fernando goes, starts 18th on the grid and ends up 5th, I think, on the day. No, not 5th, 7th. A tremendous drive from him. That just shows the guys that have like that kind of veteran leadership as well. But this is one race. This is one race where this is happening. And none of these guys were at the front. Even Max and Checo, you're going, dude, you guys have a lot more to worry about. The fact that you guys, as soon as you came around a corner and you have a straight, you guys were getting hunted down by Mercedes all friggin' weekend. That's concerning. And I'm sure that they're looking at this thing and they're going, hey, are we going to be able to steal back this, this thing? Because if Mercedes has figured something out, and then 2023 comes around and Toto is just going, I'm back and we're back and you guys have no shot against these dudes. Maybe, I don't know. I would hate for it to be another just like, I don't want Red Bull to dominate, and I just want there to be competitive races like this every weekend. What did we say? I think we said this about about Austin. We were like, I want a race like that every weekend. Let's have an Austin every weekend. And then this weekend, we have Mexico in the middle, where we go, I could go without Mexico the rest of this way. And then we go, give me Interlagos every freaking weekend. It was a fantastic week. And I think it was helped by the sprint. I think the sprint was the fact that guys put their elbows out in the race, like that race was a race. There were guys pushing each other around. People were locking up in every friggin' first corner. And I just thought, I was really excited about the fact that those guys showed up, and everything's been decided kind of, to an extent. But there were guys proving themselves this weekend. Mercedes gets a 1-2. Even Lewis was like, I think that they were wondering what was going to happen. They let those guys fight, and to George's credit, Lewis Hamilton, I think lesser people would have, Lewis would have chased him down. But credit to George, he got his first win because the team was not saying do whatever you want. It was, the team wasn't saying, hey, let George win. It was you guys race, and he did. And they did, and it was still George on top, so I was happy for him.
Yeah, when that safety car came out and it brought a bunch of the field back up, I thought that Lewis was going to be able to get George because Lewis is so good there at Interlagos. And, so I think even more credit to George that he had to fight off his, teammate in same equipment. And he really did not put a tire wrong other than qualifying when he stuck it in the dirt, and he became Russell, the wilderness explorer from Tribe. What was it from Tribe 74? Yeah, he just went flying into the dirt and beached himself. But other than that, he had a flawless weekend.
Yeah, it was a fun one to watch, and I think just overall, now things get really interesting because you go to Abu Dhabi, and I think everybody's kind of looking forward to whatever the things are that come out in this next race, and all the things that have happened over this weekend. I saw when they had those historic vehicles that they were doing the lap on, and Mick Schumacher was riding around with Seb on the back seat like it was like he was the chairman of the board, which frankly he kind of is. I had this feeling of, this really sucks that Mick Schumacher, he's just being already sort of just cast aside. And like I said, we have guys like Lance Stroll who are garbage teammates, that are going to that are going to still be on the grid, and there's some confusing parts of this, but I'm looking forward to next year, and we're going to have a couple races, obviously, to still be able to talk about what that's going to look like, but pretty promising. This is the kind of stuff, races like this, I think, bring the kind of newish American or new F1 crowd, and the United States has the largest kind of booming population of that. Of the new fan, it's a race weekend like this that is massively helpful, I think, to be able to kind of push that forward, because when you have the races that end with somebody up by 1 minute and 48 seconds, then it's not nearly as fun. And when it's already wrapped up on, lap 30 or whatever, then it's not as fun. But to see that side stuff where everybody's fighting over one another, that's the kind of race I think that really draws in the new fan.
Yeah, the drama continues well after the checkered flag, getting on Twitter and be like, wait, what did Max just say? Why did he say that? What's going on post-race? Feels like there's, as much excitement as, when they get back to the paddock. And so I'm totally with you. Back to Mick Schumacher, I was impressed. He, obviously he kind of got hosed a bit by the team on the tire strategy during qualifying. Mm-hmm. So he didn't make, he was qualified dead last and 20th, and then made up 7 spots or 8 spots in the sprint race, while Magnussen lost, almost the equivalent. And then, he came back he finished 13th. So not in the points, but yeah, like you said, there are other folks on the grid that I would prefer to trade out for Mick to keep him in the sport. So we'll see. It's not finalized yet, but there definitely are lots of rumors around Hülkenberg coming back. And then Logan Sargent got time this weekend in, I think, FP1. So that helps him towards his super license point needs. So just as a reminder, Logan is the American driver joining Williams next year, but he needs to get the kind of minimum level of super license points. And so he's coming up on the last F2 race of the season next week at Abu Dhabi. So pay attention to that. And as long as he finishes at least 5th in the standings, and I think he's currently in 3rd, then he'll be racing in F1 next year. So that'll be a lot of fun to have that American driver to be cheering for.
I'm sure that we'll probably see more. Anytime you have a push like this, when will there be kind of an American wave of drivers? Because, at some point, this was a sport that felt very American even in the beginning, even though the FIA has always been, like a French body, that's governed the sport. But, you think about the Indianapolis 500 and how that was part of that F1 kind of beginnings, and American drivers were a huge part of that. And then at some point it just kind of fell away and became more of a European sport than it did an American one. Does this create a wave where you see the popularity not just go up like, hey, this is kind of a fun little niche thing here, I don't know, what do you compare this to in terms of sports that are on the rise in America?
Yeah, that's a good question. ESPN saying that the viewership on Formula One is growing like 50% year over year. It's the fastest growing sport on ESPN. And, with 3 races in the States next year, that's insane that one country gets 3 races, but you only have one driver. I think that, Formula One and then all the teams see the business potential and opportunity there to have an American driver on their team. And hopefully Colton Herta can get, super license points. I think they need to just reassess that whole system so that the series that these guys actually, Americans run in, IndyCar or wherever, actually have a fighting chance of being able to qualify to race in F1 instead of having to move over to Europe and race F2 is being the only path. So I think it's going to come soon. I think in the next 5 years, I bet you'll get Colton Herta and maybe another American driver in there, and it'll be a lot more than what we've had for the last 30 years.
I'm still reading some of the dramatics on the radio messages, and just how ridiculous some of these things were that were going back and forth, because his race engineer said, "Max, let Checo through, please, Max," and then when he didn't, he said, "Max, what happened?" And then Verstappen says, "I told you already last time. Are we clear about that? I gave my reasons, and I stand by that. Don't ask me that question anymore." So there's something like that is way like there's something. I don't think it's just Monaco. I think there's something else. And we'll demonize these guys, and let's let Netflix let's let Netflix really get a hold of this one. And I
can't wait for this episode.
Oh my gosh! And it's going to be a lot of the race messages that are kind of bent around in different directions, so that we really think that they hate each other. I know it's a massively passionate thing. These guys probably get off of the track and they go, "Hey, listen, it's nothing personal against you." In this case, though, it feels a lot like it when you have to say that. And then when Checo responds with a, "Hey, you know what? This is oh, thank you for that, guys. Thank you." That was the one that got me, because his engineer reached out and goes, "Okay, so Max will let you through," and then nothing. The race goes over, and he goes, "Hey, thank you for that, guys. Thank you." Shows who he really is, and I love that stuff. Like, there is no version of this that we have where you're on the same team, but we are getting these radio messages, yes, and but still fighting against one another. So. I think a lot of people did not. There might be people who are like, "Oh, I'm okay with Max being a champion." I think a lot of people jumped on the can't stand Max train, and I think that's going to keep going too. And if he keeps winning, it gets even worse, because people just get grumpy at the guy who's hard to race. But there's probably a reason he's number one in the world too, because he's a massive competitor, an insane competitor, and at any level. I don't care what sport it is. The thing that you find out about all these guys at the top is how much of an insane competitor they are, how they can't turn it off. There's no version of them turning it off, and you see it at every level of sports. And so I don't think it's any different for F1. If we had radio messages for during soccer matches and during football, I mean, we get the wired helmet stuff from the guys in these football games, but you're not peeking in the locker room, and there's a reason, because there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that. Would kind of sink teams in terms of that look for their fan base. So I'm on the one hand I go, what a dork, and on the other hand I go, these guys are competitive for a reason, and they're at the top for a reason.
Lewis had his moments back in the day when he was fighting for those 7 championships and going up against his teammates. So
I forgot about Lewis. Lewis this weekend, did you see that whole thing about somebody asked him, they were like, "Hey, what about how do you compare that 2008 race or the 2008 championship race to the 2021 one?" He goes, "Well, 2021 wasn't rigged. That outcome in 2008 wasn't rigged, but last year obviously somebody wanted a certain outcome, and that's what you got." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this guy's accusing the entire sport of cheating for this one guy, for him not to win." And you go, but he can say kind of whatever he wants, because he's freaking Lewis Hamilton.
He'll believe that till the day he dies, for sure. But I think you're right. I think this is Max coming of age a bit, in that he is the 2-time world champ. He's the big dog on the grid, And, he is going to put his foot down for whatever he thinks is, I guess, important in terms of kind of stating his place on the team. And I think that he did lose some fans today. I've always been kind of like, when Max was winning last year and dethroning, Mercedes and their dominance, I was a big Max fan. And then this year he's like, okay, he's winning a lot, whatever. And then now I'm kind of like, he's kind of a,
okay, but hold on.
A punk.
But hold on. I'm gonna throw this one out there, and it's hard to know. And the racing was a little bit different, but there was still that team aspect in the back and forth, and you have the team thing, and then you have like the individual racer. So because we were in Brazil for today, what would Senna do? Would Senna go, sure, I'll let him through? Why not? Like, is that an Ayrton Senna thing to do? I just don't remember team orders being as big of a deal back then. I have to go back and look, but I don't remember. Like, everyone wants to babysit feelings and singular points here and there, but, like, honestly, you ask the best guy in the world to let somebody pass, hey, let him pass because we're going to have these little dinky points that are going to go to him. Whether or not he has a beef against him or not, there's this part of him, too, that goes, everybody remembers that quote, from Ayrton Senna. It was like, if you're not going for a gap that's there, you're not a racer anymore. And certainly there's a weird thing to, sure, I'll let you through, like these weird charity points, that I think that probably would be. I mean, if you look at it like that, that whole freaking generation, Prost, what's his name with the giant mustache, Mansell, right? Do you think he would let a soul through? Like, none of those guys would. Schumacher. I don't think that's the way it worked, but maybe they did more often than I actually think that they did.
No, I think you're right. I'm going through my head in recent the past few decades champions. I don't think anybody does anything different than what Max did today. I think it's the fact that it played out on the radio afterwards that kind of caught everybody's attention. That's it was like, oh, wait, he's got some kind of beef about something very specific that none of us know about that caused him to do this. Had nothing been said over the radio and he just had finished, 4 seconds ahead, then we probably have been like, oh, well, Max is just competitive. But, it's super interesting. Sergio's going into a contract year next year, and Daniel Ricciardo is going to be the new reserve driver at Red Bull. And so you got to think like, hopefully they can get back to being buddies, because otherwise, Sergio's out, and basically they'll probably put in whoever Max says they want in there, and it might be Daniel.
Yeah, that won't, because that's always been a very friendly situation too, right? Like, I know they get along and everything, but again, on the racetrack, these guys have a history, man. And so, I'm not. Yeah. I was thinking about how. Remember when Max Verstappen comes up to Ocon? I think it was in that 2018 year when Ocon spun him.
So it was the same exact way that he got pinched down by Hamilton today.
Right, yes.
So back in that race, he pinched down on Ocon and then got pissed and went back in after the race and started
shoving him, right. And you're like, dude. But, again, I don't know. Year over year, things change, and there are guys that can get away with a lot more on the grid versus others, and it's a really weird thing, too, because you look and you go, man, there are some guys who are just not competitive at all, and there are cars that are not competitive at all. I was happy for Gunther Steiner this weekend to have that moment. It was a bummer that K-Mag was out pretty quick in that race. But overall, massive weekend, obviously. Hey, Max Verstappen's still up by 139 points in the championship race, so I think he's still got that locked up. But now it's interesting because second place in the drivers' championship, Charles Leclerc 290, Checo Perez 290. They're going into these last races.
We're all locked up, baby, racing for second.
I mean, think how wild that is. Both Leclerc and Perez were like, can you give me some extra points today from the teams? And the teams are like, yeah, sure. Or in Ferrari's case, they're like, will you settle down? If we were going to be thinking about the championship, we should have been doing it in September. So, we should have figured our crap out in September if we were going to do it. All right. Massive weekend, Dan. Final thoughts on this one and then going into the last couple weekends of the season here.
I just wish Brazil was the last race every year. I love the drama of this place. Abu Dhabi, it was dramatic last year, but most of the time it's not a ton of passing, at least not like Brazil. But I am interested to watch this fight for second in the driver standings, and then on the constructor standings, you've got I think 19 points between both Ferrari and Mercedes, and then Alpine and McLaren. So I think that'll be interesting to watch. That's money, that's big prize money that's up for stake there on the construction standings. So yeah, I think it's going to be an entertaining race and send us off into the off season with lots to think about. Hopefully, dreams of a much more competitive year.
It is kind of a weird thing when you go, hey, awesome race in Brazil. We were basically in the Americas for the last 3 races. Hey, let's go take an 18-hour flight over to Abu Dhabi, and then we'll really wrap things up. It's just like this one-off weird race at the end of the year. I get it because they probably paid some premium to be the last race of the year so that they could get finishes like they had. But I think, is there like another technical reason why they keep everything kind of right there? Do they end up doing any testing like right there, right after everything is done? Or why is it that they have this thing kind of end right there?
Yeah, at least last year they did. They rolled straight into off-season testing the next week. But I don't know why you couldn't do that at Brazil. I mean, it's kind of up to F1 and Pirelli exactly what they want to do. But I'm with you. They probably just offered up the most money to have that last coveted last race spot.
It's going to be an interesting one. I'm still looking forward to how this thing's going to end up. So, hey, that means the last few full on episodes that have race breakdowns too, and our previews as well. So, Dan, we'll catch you next week, man. Thanks for hanging out. We'll drop an episode midweek here, and we'll jump into some more F1 stuff. And so, really appreciate you joining me here, man, and doing the race breakdown on a Sunday night.
Sounds great.
All right. For Dan, I'm Alex. Mode Push Podcast. Share it, like it, subscribe, tell a friend, teach a neighbor that F1 is not something to be afraid of. You can love it, even in your American sport-loving household. We'll see you next time, everybody.